Here we are. It's Good Friday. And after a Lent of, in my mind, unprecedented authenticity, at least in my experience, we've now walked through a Holy Week that seems really challenging and incredibly real. One of the special gifts of our quarantine in worship is that we're able to worship with other communities and still worship at the same time with our own. I worship today with my dear friends at St. George's Cathedral in Jerusalem, walking the Stations of the Cross in the cathedral with Archbishop Hossam, or Archbishop Suhail and Bishop-elect Hossam. They're alone in the cathedral because of the quarantine with only, I'm guessing it was Salim, a seminarian. I'm not sure who it was because I never saw his face, but Salim walking in front of them with the iPhone, sending them out on Facebook Live. They processed and they prayed and they sang. Usually they'd walk the Stations of the Cross in the Old City, walking the real path of Jesus in those winding, ancient, white limestone streets. They'd walk along the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrows that Jesus walked, the actual path that the church remembers on the way to Golgotha for Jesus and his crucifixion. But even inside the cathedral, stopping before the Stations of the Cross, which at St. George's are beautifully painted Armenian tiles representing the Stations of the Cross in the Old City, the sheer enormity of Good Friday was overwhelming to me. The Passion from the Gospel of John, like the Passion from Matthew, begins in the Garden of Gethsemane, at the base of the Mount of Olives. It's before, as you walk across the Kidron Valley, past the tomb of the prophets, and then climb the hill, Mount Moriah, back up to the walled city of Jerusalem. And they stop after leaving there. They take Jesus, after his arrest at the Garden of Gethsemane, they take him to the house of Annas, who is the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who that year is the great high priest. They rotated. It was a rotating assignment, and they would alternate. And so it was Caiaphas's year on. He might have taken the next year off. It might have been a 3-year rotation or a 1-year rotation. Across the Kidron Valley from the Garden of Gethsemane, still outside the walls of the Old City, is the ancient structure that archaeologists believe was Caiaphas's house. And it's a chilling place. It's a very chilling place. It's difficult ever to read the Passion narrative again without seeing the first century houses and the first century prison in the basement of that place. It's a rock prison that is hewn into the side of Mount Moriah. It's part of the walls, living rock as they call it, carved right into the wall of the mountain. And there are places in that prison with great holes like this, carved in walls of rock that they have placed chains through. I'm sure those chains are not 2,000 years old, but they've placed chains through to show how a prisoner might have been held there and tortured. And there's also a great stone pit, a deep stone pit. And all of those times when we read the psalm about the pit, that will also stick with you once you've seen the pit in this prison. There's a Roman Catholic church built over this first century high priest's house that, like most of the churches in the Holy Land, is over a Byzantine house way down low, a Byzantine church that might have been a home, might have been Caiaphas's house. And then there'll be a Crusader layer over that at the end of the first millennia of the Common Era. And then over that is a 20th century, like 1960s Roman Catholic church, which is also kind of common. And the church is called Gallicantu. It's from the Gallus for rooster or cock, and cantu from to sing or crow. Think of the English word chant or cantor. So Gallicantu, the rooster crowed. And it's called the Church of the Cockcrow, Gallicantu, because it was there in the courtyard that Peter fulfilled Jesus' prophecy that despite Peter's love and loyalty to Jesus, before the cock crowed at dawn, Peter was going to say he never knew him. There's a beautiful bas-relief in brass on the front door, the new front door, the 1960s front door of Gallicantu, that has a very subtly colored rooster on it. You can just see the blue and the red. It's just a beautiful piece showing us the cock crowing. And before I spent time at Gallicantu last year, I always had my focus on Jesus in the Passion narrative. Gallicantu gives us another perspective and invites us to walk with Peter and see where we stand in the Passion narrative. There's a chapel in Gallicantu down lower in the building toward the oldest part of the church that focuses on Peter. And it shows Peter as he realizes that Jesus' prophecy of Peter's betrayal has come true. This beautiful mosaic tile depicts Peter's anguish and his realization. We can feel as we read the Passion narrative tonight that this was not where Peter expected to be. This wasn't where Peter thought their relationship was going, his relationship with Jesus. Remember, as Jesus starts to tell Peter, way up in the north country, way up in the Galilee, in the upper Galilee near Syria, when they're at Caesarea Philippi, and Jesus asks Peter, "Who do you think I am?" And Peter says, "You're the Christ." And Jesus starts to tell Peter then that he's going to his crucifixion. He sets his face for Jerusalem, and they walk towards the crucifixion and head back down out of the Galilee to Jerusalem. He's been telling him since then, and Peter says, no, that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to stay with you, and you're going to live. This wasn't how Peter expected the story to turn out. And it wasn't how Peter expected to respond when he was asked. In John's Gospel, bystanders in the courtyard of Annas' house ask if Peter is one of Jesus' disciples because they saw him with Jesus. But in the Passion in Matthew's Gospel, Peter betrays Jesus and himself with his own humanity. Two different servant girls in Matthew's Gospel recognize Peter and say that they saw Peter with Jesus the Galilean. Peter denies that he knows Jesus both times. And then bystanders, maybe the same or maybe different or more servant girls, maybe others, they approach Peter. And so they say, "Surely you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you." Peter, who loved Jesus so much that he promised him he'd rather die than to desert him, betrays Jesus just as Jesus foretells he will. And his Galilean accent betrays him. That's his desertion. It's a flaw in his own character. Peter's Galilean accent, his dialect, the way they talk back home in Capernaum, where Peter's from, and Jesus too. Galilee is where Peter grew up and lived and worked and loved. Galilee is the place of Peter's formation as a human being, his hometown. And his accent, the way people talk back home, is the very thing that betrayed him. It's the most human part of him. the way he's learned to talk, the accent that's as much a part of home for him as the stones and the dirt he walked on in the Galilee. That accent has betrayed him, exposing his own humanity and brokenness. We're all broken. It's a condition of our humanity as much as a part of our formation is the dirt we walk on, as the air we breathe, as the way people talk back home where we're from. Our accent betrays us. Jesus came to redeem us and to restore us to wholeness through his own fully human, fully divine nature. He knows Peter will desert him before it happens. He knows before Peter knows. Peter's humanity makes his desertion of Jesus inevitable. His accent has betrayed him. Now we wait. After the most authentic Lenten season and most real and present Holy Week in most of our lives, even though we're not worshiping in the church as we usually do, it really is kind of a superlative. It is a superlative. So now we wait. We wait and we hope. And we look towards the light of Easter. Amen. Will you pray with me? Gracious and merciful God, forgive us our trespasses and our weaknesses. Forgive us our fragility and susceptibility to self-focus. Forgive us our many flaws, which are as much a part of us as our own accents, which you know, but we cannot recognize in ourselves. Give us the strength and courage to love and serve you, and to understand that to love you is to take on the hard work of wrestling with our own humanity. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.